Academica Media. You are listening to Charter School Superstars, bringing you the voices of an education revolution.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Ryan Kairalla from Doral College. And our guest this week on the program is the SEL coordinator for Rowe Middle School in Chicago, where she has helped develop a comprehensive social and emotional learning and restorative justice platform on her campus. She has previously worked for the local school district as a teacher, director of operations, and assistant principal. And you can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.roweelementaryschool.org. We are happy to welcome Christine McCracken on the Charter School Superstars. Hello, Christine.
Hello, Ryan. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you here. What a great diversity of job titles you've held. I feel like we can call upon your expertise in teaching, in administration, and in so many different things, but it all comes back to social and emotional learning, which I know is a huge passion of yours. And so I'd love to hear about this through the lens of your school. So if you could, tell us about Rowe Middle School to start things off. And what would you say makes your school so special?
I would love to tell you about Rowe Middle School. So I have been at Rowe. So we're an elementary and a middle school, K-8. I have been here for 7 years now and held a variety of different roles, like you mentioned. And what really drew me to Rowe in the first place was the emphasis on social emotional learning. It's written into the mission and vision. It's incorporated in our core values. And so that's kind of what drew me to the school in the first place. And we have the privilege of serving just about 1,000 students, kindergarten through 8th graders across the city of Chicago. So we are obviously a charter school. And so as long as students live in the city of Chicago, they're eligible to attend our school.
I love this. And so that was going to be one of my questions. I was curious about whether SEL was sort of something that came later in terms of your school's development, or if it was sort of baked into the bread of your school from the beginning. And it sounds like it was one of those foundational things that your school always sort of had this SEL emphasis and focus.
Yeah, so SEL is something that has always been a critical component for Rowe. So when the charter was first established, it was something that was critical, and the two kind of marrying strong, rigorous academics with SEL skills. So kind of that importance of making sure, just as we explicitly teach kids how to multiply, divide, add, subtract, determine the meaning of unknown words, it's important to also explicitly teach those social emotional skills as well. So how to be a good friend, how to build relationships, how to navigate peer conflict, all of those things have really been baked into our charter really from day one. About 3 years ago, though, is when we at the middle school level specifically really said, okay, how can we really take this and make this just an intentional part of our every single day at Rowe?
I love it. Now, you talked a little bit about SEL in your answer there, but just to get everybody on the same page, could you give us a good definition of what SEL is and talk a little more about some of the ways that you employ it on your campus?
Yeah, I'd love to. So social emotional learning, SEL, is really the way that we look at it at Rowe is we really take the CASEL competencies, which are similar to, as teachers, we're looking at Common Core standards, looking at next generation science standards. Well, these CASEL competencies are really what are the standards for our SEL curriculum. So their social awareness, relationship skill building, all of those pieces really develop what the social emotional standards for the kids are. And of course, there's different developmental roadblocks that we want kids to hit along the way. SEL is something that is integrated into our day-to-day at Rowe. It is from the moment that kids walk into school. It is all over our hallways. It is all over. You'll see different cores, different skills that we're working on. So let's say that we're working on bullying and harassment and raising awareness about that. You will see that all throughout the school. Our kids at the middle school start each day in what we call advisory, where there's about 10 to 15 students. So it's a really small group of kiddos, and they are with their advisor. And that's a really intentional time that we use. And we set the day with that intentionally as well to make sure that we're starting the day with social emotional learning. learning. So what that looks like in advisory is that we have different check-ins with students. We have explicit SEL instruction. We use the second step curriculum, which we are a huge fan of. We use that K-8. And then we have different discussions, community builders, and then also checkouts with kids as well. So it's really kind of integrated and baked into our day-to-day. And it's also integrated like within our academic work as well.
Okay, so yeah, you have this separate time right at the start of your school day that's dedicated to SEL, but you were saying it's also integrated into your academics. What does that look like?
Absolutely. So, when we're as teachers, as educators, we obviously have our kids working in groups. We have our kids working in pairs. We have our kids maybe presenting. And so it's making sure that we're kind of being mindful of that and using those opportunities to also teach SEL skills as well. We are fortunate to use a second step curriculum, which also provides alignment with Common Core standards and ways to incorporate that into the academic world as well.
Wow. So how does that influence the way that you select faculty? I imagine that certain faculty members are better suited to integrating this curriculum into their academics than others. So what does your recruitment process look like when you're looking for the right teachers to embrace your school's philosophy?
Sure. We really believe that teaching to the whole child and seeing kids as humans first. We really believe in relationship building. We really believe in, setting, giving ourselves grace and giving the kids grace, but really seeing them as humans, I would say first and foremost. And so when we are recruiting, we're always asking questions about, what kind of are your beliefs about restorative justice and restorative practice? What do you, if a child, shows kind of some discipline or shows some behavior challenges, kind of what are your beliefs? What are your true beliefs when it comes to that? Because at Rowe, I will say we're unique in thinking, that if a child makes a mistake, as humans, we all make mistakes, right? And so it's our intentional job, as educators to teach kids and to work with them and to partner with them and to work through that problem and to work through whatever the challenge or the barrier may be to grow and become more resilient kind of on the other end of that.
I can dig that. Now, you brought up restorative justice, which means I got to talk to you about it because I think this is a pretty fascinating concept as well. And I will confess, it's a concept that I didn't learn a lot about, in my early time as a teacher and an education professional. I'm playing catch up a little bit, so I'm glad to talk to you to help me in this playing of catch up. But can you tell all of the viewers and listeners out there what restorative justice is and how it tends to differ from more traditional forms of addressing student misbehavior?
Sure. So one organization that we partnered with, and I could not recommend them higher. They used to be Emoja, and now they've changed their name to New Root, but they do a lot of work and explicitly teaching on social justice and restorative justice and restorative practices. And so it's really kind of walking through steps and skills on how to have a peace circle, how to facilitate that. What does that look like? How when harm happens, right? As humans, within relationships, that's just kind of the nature of the beast, right? How, if harm does occur, how can we own that? How can we own our impact? How can we kind of apologize, move forward, and just getting kids also the ability to reflect and understand, what do I need in this situation too? So we go through a process of 4 questions with kids. So what happened? Who did it impact? How were others affected by this? And what do I need to move forward? And so kind of using that and getting kids to just, and our kids they're so amazing, but they will tell you exactly how they are feeling and why they are feeling that way, and sometimes sometimes it kind of, but they will advocate for themselves in a really strong way. And so it's getting away from, that school to prison pipeline where we're saying this is what, in conforming to this is what we need. We need silent classrooms and we need silent lines. It's really seeing the kids more as, how can we partner with you? How can we work with you? And when we make mistakes, how can we work through those together? And knowing that we are here for you, we're in your corner, and we want to restore, we want to move forward.
it can't possibly be a coincidence that a school like Rowe embraces both SEL as well as restorative justice and restorative practices. There's a lot of overlap there, right? I mean, you almost can't have one without the other if your overall goal is we are trying to educate the whole child and embrace the whole child. I mean, it's no accident that both of these philosophies are being embraced at Rowe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the way that I kind of look at it as SEL is the skills to teach, and restorative practice is more in our response, right? So you'll see also through our student code of conduct, we have, oh my gosh, that was a beast of a project that we worked on. It was a summer project, it was one of those. It was a summer project, but we worked on that, and we really just took apart, really the entire thing, and really. We have created our discipline grid. It is more flexible and is more fluid and gives teachers kind of a menu of options to respond to. And like skill building being one of those, right? You would think before it would be, you got multiple reminders and now you have a detention. Well, we have multiple reminders, and then maybe we have a skill building, or we talk to that student after class. We partner with that student and say, hey, I noticed this was going on. Tell me more, what's on your mind. And I think really getting to know students is really important in that piece too.
Well, yeah, you can't have SEL or restorative practices unless it's sort of based on this idea of we got to get to know our kids, which would be a good practice for any school to embrace, whether you're going to have SEL and restorative practices as a big part of your philosophy or not. So it's almost nice to have philosophies on your campus baked into the bread of your school that require you to really get to know your students. What a nice little byproduct there. One of the things that I was intrigued about when learning more about your school, Christine, was the role that data and assessments play in SEL. As much as I've been learning about SEL and restorative practices in the last couple years, I haven't thought much about how it can be a data-driven endeavor. But learning about your school, I found out that it can be. Yeah. So what role does data and assessments play in some of the programming that your school does? I'm so curious.
Yes, we love data. We love data, and we are also one of our, within our strategic plan, one of our big rocks or our big goals is to be a data-driven culture. And I see that as, kind of an umbrella that SEL and academics fit into as well. So when you want to see kind of what your students know, give them a pre-test, right? Give them an assessment. You see what they know and where their areas of growth may be. So we are fortunate. We use the DESA rating scale as our universal platform. So what that does is it's a series of questions, a series of rating questions that our teachers answer for each student. And we do that for across the board for all of our students. And students come back as they get a T-score. So they're either considered a student that's at need of instruction, typical, or a strength. And based on that kind of deems next steps. So if you come back as a need, there's another series of questions that we try to drill down to get more specific. I mentioned those CASEL competencies earlier. So we try to see, okay, where are the strengths and where are the areas of growth? It is all a strength-based assessment. So we can really see where are our kids doing well and where might they need a little bit more support in so that we can intentionally build that in. So we use that data. Our culture team uses that data. Our behavior health team uses that data. Our teachers know that data. Our parents know that data when they come in for family report card pickup, for parent-teacher conferences. So it's really just kind of part of, it's part of, I don't know, just our performance, I would say. And, just like you wouldn't give a pre-assessment, or just like you wouldn't give a summative assessment for a kid without teaching them anything, right? You have to progress monitor along the way. And so it's not only monitoring through assessments, but also so it's baked into our PBIS system a little bit too. So what we do is we for our PBIS system, it's all also connected to the character traits that are explicitly taught in second step. So when a child is demonstrating resilience or academic success or whatever that might be, they get what we call a raise. They get a paycheck at the end of the week. It's very exciting. We call it payday. They get a raise and we reward that, right? And so that's kind of it's so integrated into really everything that we do, and that allows us to progress monitor it. So our grade level teams come together every week and we say, okay, our goal was to have 80% or more of our students to have $70 or more in their paycheck. What is our data point at? What does that look like? Okay, what do we need to do to, for next week to get kids there, or to not, what do we need to kind of problem solve as a team? So data is something we look at, very, very, very frequently. And our goals also, like our strategic plan, we have culture goals, right? We have SEL goals. And that really comes from our fearless leaders. Our principals are incredible. Mrs. Beckless is our principal here at the middle school. And she really drives that and pushes us to ensure that our SEL is forefront, because it's not SEL. You can't really be like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like you kind of got to go all in on it, right? And so I would say that it's just really just such an integral part of our day-to-day.
Well, and if you're not measuring it, it can very easily become just window dressing.
Absolutely.
The quantifiable numbers are what allow you in your school to make sure this isn't just something you're paying lip service to, but is something that you can actually measure and see that your students are thriving at in real time. And I preface this next question by saying on the front end, embracing a whole child approach to students and embracing positive SEL is inherently a good thing, regardless of whether it has a positive effect on academic outcomes.
Absolutely.
But I am curious, though, do you find, or at least in your own school's experience, that this approach has translated to strong academic performance by the students who've gone through it?
I'm so happy you asked that question, because I was just reflecting on that earlier today. Our 8th graders, they were like they went virtual halfway through 6th grade. They had explicit SEL instruction in 7th grade, and now they are here in 8th grade. And I hear from my 8th grade teachers, these kids are amazing. Like, why are they, they're incredible. They're amazing. And so I really think that has a lot to do with that explicit SEL. And really, I just can't emphasize enough just the importance of relationship building. We talk about that all of the time. And we start with that over the summer. Like, we're reaching out to families and kids over the summer, getting to know them. I'm getting to know them as people, and really making those connections with kids. But I've definitely seen it. We see it and it does translate to their academics as well. Absolutely. We had just yesterday, I had a student who I had in 4th grade 7 years ago. So he's in high school now. He came back, and, for him just to be able to be like, hey, Miss McCracken, how are you? What's going on? What's new? To engage in that conversation. And I know that's not exactly addressing your question, but it gets to that feel of like this, our goal is for Rowe to feel like a second home to our kids, in a place they want to come back to, in a place they love coming back to. And it's just really, I've been fortunate to be here throughout so many years where I've actually seen that kind of translate to reality.
You should know that the last part of your answer there addresses the question perfectly. Inasmuch as on this podcast, until the end of time, I will always welcome a story of a kid that you educated coming back as like a full adult, and like you being like, I knew you when your backpack was bigger than you are, and now look what you created. And like, and like, it makes your day, it makes your week.
Oh,
and
yes.
Like, you're thinking about that kid. Those stories, I can never hear enough of them. So,
oh, yes.
Absolutely. Just great stuff. Folks, you can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.roweelementaryschool.org. Great stuff going on over in Chicago at Rowe. All right, before we let you go, Christine, one last question. If with the snap of your fingers you could make any changes to the education system, what change would it be?
So I think that, especially from a charter school lens, just not allowing for zip codes to determine students' education. So equitable and accessible and strong academics for all kids, regardless of where they live, and regardless of everything. So I would just say strong equitable experiences for all of our kids within education.
Well said. That's what we're all here for. Christine, thank you so much for your time this week. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to Charter School Superstars.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.